selling Ritalin and therapy sessions to high school kids. It's not just my day job. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, senior editor of Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and that is actually the premise of today's film, Charlie Bartlett, and we're very excited to have with us for the Q&A, screenwriter Gustin Nash. If you dig these podcasts, remember you should also be reading Creative Screenwriting Magazine, which you could find at Barnes & Noble and Borders bookshops in America, Canada, and parts of Western Europe, including the UK. Creative Screenwriting Magazine has more interviews with screenwriters than any other magazine we could name, so check out the details about our latest issue at www.creativescreenwriting.com. But now, without further ado, let's jump right onto the stage right after I introduced screenwriter Gustin Nash to talk about his new film, Charlie Bartlett.
We're going to start where we always do, which is breaking in stories as I get acquainted here, sitting down. You went to USC for film school.
Yes.
Right on, fight on. I went to SC too. It's all good. What years were you there? What program were you in?
I was in the writing program, 95 to 99, the undergraduate program. Yeah.
They kind of revamped it in the mid to late 90s, didn't they? Kind of gave it a little more push, the writing program at SC?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my class was a really strong class. 99, we had like Josh Schwartz, who did the OC, and Jamie Vanderbilt, who did the Zodiac. So I was kind of the late bloomer of the five of us that sort of graduated pretty strong. Yeah.
What do you think was the most important thing that you kind of learned in that class? Like, what were some of the skill sets that you feel film school helped you fill out that you didn't have going in?
Definitely story understanding, I think. Business I really learned in the 4 years of struggle after film school. One piece of advice that I got that was incredibly important was someone said, don't worry about this until you have 10 scripts in a pile, and then look at it and decide what you're going to do with it, and only then do you know if you're a writer or not. So I didn't put a whole lot of pressure on myself until I had a stack of scripts at that point. So.
Well, actually, I know that you're not joking around. You're being serious about this. To my knowledge, you graduated film school, and you would not show anyone your writing sample for sale until
I don't know that I didn't show anybody.
Okay.
I think it was more like as soon as I got any hint of negative feedback, I kind of pulled back and went back to the drawing board. But it was a long haul of writing scripts and not getting a whole lot of feedback. Yeah. I
mean, there's nothing more traumatic for film school students than graduating film school and finding out there's not a list of agents and managers at the end of that graduating line.
No,
what did you do after school?
Well, I was lucky enough to get an agent. I had an agent speak who spoke. Look, this is the other thing. Is that he came and spoke when I was 18. And he said, everyone said, how do you get an agent? And he said, write a good script. I'm trying to do my ex-agent. But and so I spent 4 years trying to figure out what that was. And then I had one script that I showed him. I was lucky enough to get to him. And he signed me. And it was still, I had a couple little tiny jobs, but I really went broke very fast. And he sort of said, look, keep writing. And when we have something, we have something. So... and he was great, and I was with him for 10 years at William Morris, so I was really lucky in that regard. Yeah. So,
what was the writing sample that landed you?
It was a father-son spy story called Persona Non Grata, and I think right after I wrote it, we started having trouble. I mean, I think he literally went and worked for terrorists. The spy, he came back and was booted from the CIA because he was too old and decided that he was going to work for terrorists within the United States. Didn't work out. So, but it was well written enough that he signed me. So.
Is it true that? Well, actually, I want to talk about Da Mob from 2001. Okay. I'm not familiar with it, so tell me what it was.
I also am not familiar with it. I've never seen any episode that I've written. Well, that's not true. I saw one episode that I wrote that my father taped because. It was, it was just something. They hired me to do, for a small amount of money per episode, this show that was about three, I think they were white guys trying to become hip hop stars, and it was animated, not particularly well animated, and it was one of those. It was a dream job actually for after college. I was living in this little dumpy place in Burbank, and they would give me 30 days to write an episode, and it would take me a day, I mean, that's how much brain power went into this thing. And then I wouldn't work for the rest of the month. And that didn't last very long. It was on ABC Family. I saw one episode. It wasn't, it's kind of, don't we all have something like that on IMDb eventually?
Well, I mean, so was that your first gig?
That was
the
my
first
That was
time
my
you got
first
paid
gig.
for it?
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yeah, that's technically my first time I've been produced. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean,
you got to start somewhere.
You're stuck with it for the rest of your life,
That's right.
buddy.
So be it. I can handle that.
No, and there's nothing wrong with it
worse.
because that's a good thing. Now, to my knowledge, one of the jobs that you took after school was selling cameras in a Burbank mall.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
Yeah, for a long time, for about 3 years.
3 years? So did that help you get a grasp on, I'm moving to this movie now. Tell us how you got the concept for Charlie Bartlett and just kind of reconnecting for the teen movie.
Well, okay. I'll tell you another story first, and then I'll lead into that.
Shoot, please.
Okay. So when this premiered at Tribeca, you always get asked the question, how autobiographical is it? And I'm terrible. I'm like, one of my biggest fears is public speaking. So like, if I defecate myself on stage, you guys are just gonna have to forgive me. I know we're podcasting.
Oh, we have Depends backstage.
Okay.
Should have grabbed one.
Whew. All right, but I was up at Tribeca and sue me. I took a Xanax before getting up on stage. Oh, can you hear? A Xanax.
Sorry, you just weren't speaking to the mic.
Okay, and I was standing up there and I saw my shoe was untied and I bent down to tie my shoe and the bottle of Xanax fell out of my pocket onto the stage. Everyone thought it was staged. It was not staged. And then the next question for everyone up there was for me, and it was how autobiographical was the film. What was the original question?
Just getting the idea.
How did I guess?
Working in the mall with the camera store.
I was working in the mall, and there were now keep in mind I was 26 years old working in a mall.
So this is after school.
This is after school.
You had an agent, but you were supporting yourself.
I got to the point where I was 26 years old, and I was writing all kinds of things. But I was kind of writing for the first 4 hours of the day. I would get up very early and read Variety at Barnes & Noble and not pay for it. And
now you can read it online for free, technically.
Is that true? Because I think I pay for a subscription to... Okay, well, that's good to know. By the way, I pay for this magazine.
Sorry to my friends of Ready. Yes, definitely pay for creative screenwriting.
And I do. I actually read it. I read it. And then I'd go to work and I'd read about international marketing or whatever I could while I was developing people's pictures and selling cameras. But I was also hanging out with a bunch of teenagers and anyone from 15... Well, there are people working at the mall who are also like 30. So those people too. And we would all go. There were about 3 movie theaters there. I know because I got fired from one of them. And we
Wait, which one did you get fired from?
Well, they're all connected. It was AMC, and I'm never allowed to work for AMC again. But I'm going to go to that theater and watch the movie.
Wait, what'd you do? What'd you do? I really want to hear this.
Are we still podcasting?
Yes, we're still podcasting. You don't have to answer.
Well, I won't say what I did to get fired, but I was the guy who burned the popcorn so that there were people in line pissed off because there was no popcorn. It's like pretty bad when you don't have popcorn at the movie theater. So I did other things too that, Fight Club type things.
To the popcorn.
Are you ever going to eat popcorn?
I'm never going to get popcorn again. I've just decided.
So this is we have tangents going in this. So this is good.
All right. So sorry, back to the mall.
We were going and we'd go to the teen movies and there was just such a disparity between the kids, the way they were being portrayed on screen, and how they were talking when we were going home and hanging out and playing video games. So there was that aspect to it, and then there was the I was starving aspect to the whole thing, and so I went to visit my father and he's a psychiatrist, and he said, don't get disparaged. Anytime, write in your schedule, you can do it next to everything that you're, when you're feeling down or like you're not going to be able to do it. And I went to bed that night and with a character and thinking about Candide. I don't know if anyone's read that, and just hey, it's in the movie too, and just sort of thinking of a character whose mantra was, I can do it, or I'm going to work it out, or in Obama's case, yes, we can. And the whole movie kind of came to me in one night, and I literally went back and wrote. It was the first time this had happened. I wrote the whole thing in 4 weeks while at a full-time job. It was crazy. So,
talk about your process. Did you outline when you started doing it?
Now I outline extensively. In fact, I do treatments and scriptments, and for fear that I'm going to get writer's block, and I can't really afford to do that if I've been given 8 weeks to write something or whatever. But at the time, all I did was write down bully beats up Charlie. Doesn't get any love at the cafeteria. Like that was the outline.
That works.
But it was I had the whole movie in my head, and it was just to remind me what I was doing that day. But now I outline very thoroughly.
As you said, it was a time when you were kind of starving. How did you eke out the time with your regular work schedule to find time to write every day in those 4 weeks?
It's hard. I mean, you have to do it because practice makes perfect. So I had a fairly regular schedule of working from about 2 to 9 or 1 to 9 at night at the camera store. I'd wake up really early. I'd do push-ups off my twin mattresses that were piled up on the, and I'd go down to Barnes and Noble, have a cup of coffee, read the trades, and then I'd just force myself to pump out 4 hours, just write for 4 hours, and then I'd try and think about either read about the movie business or think about the movie while I was at work. Which was tough because people, you're sort of in customer service and you're sort of supposed to help people when they come in. And then at night I would come home and I would look at what I had done that morning and think about what I was going to do the next day. And then on my days off, I was praying for the day when I could quit my job and have 12-hour writing days. And now I'm tired.
Well, we'll get to that. So after the 4 weeks, what was your first step? Did you give it to friends? Did you give it to your brother, who I know is also a writer?
I gave it to my brother. He loved it. He said this is the one. I gave it to my agent. While I was giving it to my agent, we were waiting on the coverage. What happened was my manager. I read a book called Youth in Revolt. Is this a good segue? I did it myself.
Please,
look at that.
Go for it.
And I read Youth in Revolt, and I just. One, it was Charlie Bartlett was the perfect sample for it, and two, I felt like I had to do the book, and my manager
pitch the book to our audience and our podcast listeners.
It's a sex comedy, but it's about Nick Twisp, who's sort of Woody Allen trapped in like a 14 to 16-year-old body, depending on the script of the book, and he meets a girl over summer vacation who is intellectually his counterpart, and she agrees that she'll help him lose his virginity, but he has to make his way back to her. So it's sort of this odyssey, and he ends up leaving all sorts of destruction in his wake. But the book, I'm not doing the book justice, but it's because it's a 500-page book, but it's hilarious and the characters are amazing, and so I felt like I had to do it. And my manager said, "Forget it. A-list writers have come in and they can't figure out how to crack it." And but he sent Charlie Bartlett to David Permit, and the very next day, David Permit, who was the producer on Youth in Revolt, had me in his office, and all he wanted to talk about was Charlie Bartlett. And I was confused because I thought I was coming in there to talk about Youth in Revolt, and then I had to be at my mall job. And
David Permit's a big producer. He produced Face Off.
Yeah.
I mean, he has a lot of big projects.
Right. So when he then said, he threw down his credit card and said, "You can have whatever's on there if I can just be attached to this and take it out all over town." And I still was like, Charlie Bartlett, right? Not you, like Charlie Bartlett. He's like, yeah. And
tell me you took his credit card and ran out of that office.
What went through my mind was, because I didn't really know much about him, how much is on this credit card and how much Hamburger Helper will it buy? was what I was. But instead, I made what was maybe the smartest move I've ever made, which I said, like, tell you what, no quid pro quo, but like, get me in the room to pitch for Youth in Revolt, and let me talk to my agent, and I think we're okay. And I did. I let him take. It was a huge risk to have one producer take it to the entire town, and he did, and it turned out well. And
wait, sorry to interrupt. Why would that be a risk? I mean, David has a really strong track record.
Well, because look, the whole idea behind a spec is not that it sells necessarily. The idea is you go to 50 producers who 5 at each studio, and they race to take it in. And the whole point of that is if it doesn't sell, you've at least had 50 producers, not one, read your script, so you're up for 50 jobs potentially. So it was. I knew that going in, that choice, and I wanted the assignment too badly, and I figured I could always write another script. I don't know. I kind of just went with it, and it turned out well. Permit got Jay Roach attached as the director, who Jay Roach later switched out for John Pohl, and I can tell that story. But Jay immediately created a bidding situation, and the script sold. And then a month later, I was pitching for Youth in Revolt, and I hope a little bit on my own merit I got the job, but now it looks like...
Are you able to say what it sold for? Was that ever published?
Charlie Bartlett?
Yeah.
It sold for $350 against $850.
Great.
And I gave back $200 for the budget. So go see the movie again because I deferred some of my pay. But look, I'm doing okay. I'm just saying, go see the movie.
That's cool that you believe in your own work enough to do that. I mean, that's great.
Oh, they weren't going to make the movie if I didn't give it back. What are you kidding? I was being overpaid. We made an insane deal, and
that's your first feature deal too. So,
yeah,
that's
they needed money for something. They said so. I was being overpaid, so I gave back. I deferred. I did it in a smart way. I earn money as they earn money, but and maybe if enough of you go see, in fact, if all of you go see it, I get a bonus. So
good stuff. Well,
and I'll give it back to you.
So then
go see the movie.
So then you went and you quit, obviously at the mall. That was probably pretty fast and concise.
It wasn't as fast as you think. I waited till the check came in. And then I savored every moment of counting the change in the register. And then I said goodbye, and I'm not coming back. Yeah, but that was a good day. No more hamburger helper.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, so when the film was getting into production, after they got everybody involved, was there a period where you needed to do a rewrite on your work before it went into production, or once it was cast, was there a period of rewrite?
Yeah, I did. Jay asked for a rewrite, and then that's what we used for. That's when Sidney Kimmel then picked up the movie from Maverick, because that's who originally we sold it to. And that was the draft they picked up. And then when Jay was going to do Used Guys, John came on, and John and I hit it off really well. And then I pretty much rewrote it. We started pre-pro we started rewriting it in February of 06, and production ended at the end of July, and I was rewriting it up until the very last week of production. So there were, yeah. It was,
Talk about some of the major changes that you kind of saw along the way, because I could see a script like this changing once you get the actors involved and everyone else.
The major changes were the love triangle between the daughter and the principal's daughter and Downey and Anton was made stronger. That was kind of in the background a little bit more. And John, when he came on board, we met in a bar. And I had just read the script again, and I hadn't read it in 3 or 4 months at least. And I said, he said, "What do you think about making it funnier?" And I said, "I'm so glad you said that, because it takes itself so seriously in so many places that we're just so he said, let's bring more humor to it. So that's what we started doing. Certainly, when the actors were cast, there was a lot of rewriting going on, and it was not because they were demanding it, but because as you very quickly you start to hear what's working and what's not working, and I was lucky enough to be on set the whole time, and to work with great people. So it was being rewritten, and also the Sidney Kimmel Entertainment, Bill Horberg, who's brilliant by the way, likes to do what's called kicking the tires, which means you're going to be rewriting to the last. I mean, we were working out. I remember it was the Saturday before we started shooting, and he said, "This section, pages 70 through about 100, we need to completely reconceive them." And so I was writing around scenes.
What didn't he like? I mean, that was your third act, clearly.
Well, it was the end of the second act, essentially, or whatever. Yeah, it was the whole second half of the second act. It was fuzzy. It was not. It was not what was up on there. It was there was. It had a question. There was a real question as to. It had a lot of Charlie Bartlett helping people without pills, and it was the pace of the movie was slowing down, and there were some questionable things. there were in terms of what he was. I had him actually. He made a. This is going to sound terrible, but he made an escort service of the cheerleading squad. But he did it.
I think it's brilliant, not
because
terrible. Brilliant.
Her self-esteem was low, and what he did was he then had one of those bidding things where, and everyone, and as she saw how much people were willing to pay for her, her self-esteem was lifted. So it was just like, it worked. It worked. It wouldn't have in a focus group thing. It wouldn't have panned out. So things like that started to change, and Downey was great because we would actually. The crew hated me because you're all supposed to have the same pages and be working off them. And Downey and I would be smoking cigarettes and sitting by the computer in the morning, and there would be new pages that we were doing after lunch, and people would be totally confused, but he was having a good time, so he would just, but it was great. So.
I love the title of the play that they do at the end called Hell Comes With Your Own Locker. Was there ever any consideration to kind of show some more scenes from the play or have that as a bigger section?
Yeah, I mean, the original, the actual content of the play got rewritten as time went on because we had to make certain things work, but it wasn't called Hell Comes With Your Own Locker, but it was based on a play that I had written in high school. Yeah, and put on, and with no success. So
there was never really much more that was going to be in the movie. Of that.
No, there was more shot, but it was cut down. But it was not. Yeah, there was not going to be a whole lot of it in the movie. Yeah.
What's your process for dialogue? I love the dialogue where Robert Downey Jr. says, "I can't kill myself. I have too many responsibilities." How do you work your dialogue out? Do you talk out loud? Do you record yourself and play it back?
Well, for that particular line, we have a wonderful thing called ad-libbing on the set that the actor did. That particular line. I'll take credit for other things.
Take credit for the dialogue all around in the movie was solid. What is your process for dialogue?
I get the characters talking in my head. I mean, the dialogue generally comes to me first. I have to hear them speaking. Certainly, it's easier when the actors are on board, and then you really start being able to throw things in there. But for me, I listen a lot to the way people talk, I think. And there's a fine line, which I actually think Juno did very well as well, between sort of teen speak and going too far, or teens not recognizing themselves at all. But I just sort of I figure if it makes me laugh and it makes my brother laugh and it makes my friends laugh and maybe a couple other people, then I'm okay. I have a few trusted people who I test stuff out on. So.
Do you get writer's block, and if so, how do you handle that?
My life is writer's block. I mean, my entire life is designed around coping with preventing it or dealing with it, or it depends on what you call writer's block. I mean, at this point I've done 12 projects since this sold, so I at least know that even though I'm feeling like I'm in crisis now, I'm going to get to the end, and there's that feeling. But yeah, and no writer I think is alone with that. I think we all, if we're not getting writer's block at some, if we don't get stuck on things, I don't think we're questioning, or being tough enough on our stuff.
Well, so when you get stuck, what do you do? Go for a walk, get up, or just keep pounding at it until you get your solution?
All the forms of procrastination that are probably can be found in the audience as well. But what do I do? Sometimes I write with my brother sometimes, and that helps. We just talk things out. I find, to be honest, you know what I do? I go to USC, and I lie on the lawn. And because it's an absolutely creatively, the vibe of the place is just it makes me I'm very relaxed.
Which lawn? By Norris? By the theater?
By Norris,
okay.
Yeah. And I just sit there, and you guys aren't gonna come and find me there. and I just lie there, and I just kind of. I think writer's block is really a kind of anxiety, especially if you're under the gun or you need to eat. And I think if you go to a beach or you go to some place where you're relaxed or you listen to relaxing music, I think that gets the creative juices flowing again. I think that's the best thing to do. So.
Director John Paul, he had cut his teeth as an editor on the Austin Powers movies and on Meet the Fockers.
Yeah.
This is his directorial debut. What did you learn from working with him about the post-process? I mean, was there any massaging of the screenplay, of the story in post?
That completely blew my mind. The movie was rewritten. I mean, and I was happy for it to be rewritten, but it was rewritten in post again. I mean, not in a major way. The spirit of the movie is still the same, but scenes were rearranged, and they were very afraid that I was going to be flip out. And I couldn't, because I really understood. It's just another form of rewriting, really. And I'm just of the philosophy that if you're in this business as a writer, you have to accept that you're the birth mother and there are fathers and uncles and, other people raising the child. So, and the child is never going to be perfect, but you do your best and everyone, it takes a village. See, I plugged Obama and Hillary in this one.
It's very fair and balanced.
I'm voting for McCain, so. He blew my mind, and because
give us an example of a scene that was kind of taken from maybe the beginning or the middle and ends up in the end. Something we could track.
Okay, well, I'll give you two things. One was that the entire order in which we see the montage of the psychiatrists. After that, we see the psychiatrist. The order in which we see some of those scenes changes. When he goes to visit the kid who tried to commit suicide, came much later than it does now. The major thing was we had all these. The beginning and the ending were not the original beginning and the ending. Originally it opened and closed. And there were various chapters throughout where we had, you remember Harry Met Sally? There would just be, interviews with people. It was just interviews with teenagers, and the last one was with Charlie. We opened and closed with it. And, yes, I ripped it off from Harry Met Sally. It was great on the page. We filmed it. It stopped the movie in its tracks every time. So now we had this whole movie cut together, and I had to come up with a way to open the movie and a way to close the movie, with the whole movie already done. So what ended up happening was and we all came up with it together, really, but the opening with him on stage, which seemed to fit since we were paying it off later, and then the tag, which I'm glad it plays. I was so worried about it, but it took me forever to sort of figure that out. So.
It's an interesting ending point. I mean, we also don't know what's Charlie going to do to graduate high school. I mean, was there ever some of that more information? Because he's expelled at the end of the movie as current.
Right. Well, yeah, he was he expelled? I think he was just suspended, right?
Was he okay?
He's expelled.
He was arrested. Okay. He was arrested.
Right.
Usually you're expelled when you're arrested these days. I
didn't get expelled.
I did that in my mind. That was my bad.
They wanted me in my school.
I served time in Folsom, so I'm bringing
Princeton
my own history.
can use a man like Joel. We had a look. The ending, there were a lot of things. There were sort of what happened to Downey originally. There were a couple things that we did additional photography for to try to answer some of those questions. I mean, I was never going to answer why the father was in prison. I didn't feel like I needed to. Everyone flipped out about that. I don't know that tax evasion was the best choice, but it was the most sort of innocuous thing. So
it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. We're going to open it up to the crowd in a second. Just before we do, what was your toughest scene? What was the scene that really kept you up at night? The one that you just kept rewriting the most?
And I never nailed it. It was the scene where the "I'm not a Messiah" speech that feels like a kind of a pump up the volume ripoff when he's in front of the. I mean, I never. That was the one section of the movie that kept getting rewritten and it was it got down to the wire, and I don't think I ever nailed it, and partly because I wasn't sure it should be there. So but like I said, children aren't perfect. So.
All right, we're going to take questions from the crowd right there in the third row. The question was in regards to there were posters, there was the possibility of an earlier release of this film. It happens all the time that films change their release dates. What happened here?
Well, at one point we were scheduled for August 3rd, and among other things, Bourne Ultimatum is what happened.
That was smart to stay away from that.
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter was and even still, the market is so crowded right now. And we're a small movie, and no one's afraid to put their movie on top of our movie. I mean, we tested well. We've been getting good reviews. It's just it's a small movie, and it's hard, and it's an R-rated high school movie, and it's hard to figure. It's a hard thing to sell. So it got bumped off of August 3rd, and then for a while it was going to be on Super Bowl Sunday or Super Bowl weekend. We're glad we moved it again. And now we're definitely, we're definitely the 22nd, which I think is as good as you can. It's not an easy thing to figure out. I mean, we're about 2-3 weeks away from, spring break, so we're hoping we get a little bit. We hope we last that long. Is what we're hoping. So.
But there was no reshoots between August and now or anything.
No. The movie.
It was just moved because of the
movie was locked in by April. Yeah, of last year.
That's what I thought.
Year, yeah.
Other questions. Question was, what was the budget? And actually, I would add to that, what was the shoot schedule? And what it got bought for?
What the?
Yeah, I mean, the film was. This wasn't a negative pickup, to my knowledge. It was.
No.
It was funded by Sidney Kimmel.
It was funded by Sidney Kimmel. Sidney Kimmel, and it started around 10, and the budget I think went to 12, and part of that was because that building that got trashed was we actually full on built that building and then burned it to the ground and then cut it out because it was too much. But we burned it. It was cool.
It was your do the right thing moment.
It was, or do the wrong thing moment. What was the other question? What
was the schedule?
Oh, the shooting schedule was, if I'm right, I think it was 38 days, and then with additional photography, it became like 42 or something like that.
Cool, pretty tight. You, ma'am, in the hat. Question was regards to the timeline from when you gave the script to your agent, then got the first meeting with the permit. How long has it taken to now the release?
I sold it in November of 2003, and it is coming out in February of 2008. So 5 years. Yeah.
Wow. Right there, you sir on the aisle. Are you working with John on anything else?
Not yet. I mean, we will. We will. We became very, 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 very close. I mean, he's on the college tour for the movie right now, and he's doing a movie with United Artists after this. There was talk of us doing Youth in Revolt at one point together, and then there was talk of doing Fletch together at one point, which is something they're doing over with Harvey Weinstein. We definitely want to find. We just want to find the right one to do together. But yeah, we'll definitely work together again.
Right there, you sir in the white. His grandfather's name is Charlie Bartlett. He's curious. How did you come up with the name?
This deal with your grandfather. Charlie came from Charlie Brown, which is sort of was my symbol of adolescent angst. And by the way, I really did play Linus in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. I wasn't any good, but I did play Linus. And then I was just looking for a snappy name with a ring to it, and I saw Bartlett's quotations up on my bookcase. So it became Charlie Bartlett. Not terribly profound. Sorry.
You sit right behind him. Was there any discussion with Robert Downey Jr. about playing a character with a substance problem, which, by the way, he kind of does again in Iron Man, because that character also had one, and then also talk about the two main leads?
Like, did I say, Robert, it's really cool that you're doing this, given that you have you really know a lot about drugs and
Wasn't my question. It was from the crowd.
No, there was. I mean, not. No, I mean, in fact, he. CAA said to us, they sort of implied, if you offer this to Robert, he will do it, which I think he had gotten a hold of the script beforehand, and I think it was not reluctance. I think he specifically wanted to tackle that at this point. And I think it was to sort of close a chapter on his life. John, when he was on the phone with Robert, he said, this character of Charlie Bartlett is not unlike you might have played him when you were younger. And Robert, and then we left it at this. Robert said, John, the irony is not lost on me. and that was the last we said of it. Now, what was the other question? Where did we get the two teenage leads? Anton was someone that John knew about from the beginning. And, of course, he had to go through 30 people before we had to see at least 30 people. But it was so obvious from the audition and from talking to him and his thoughts on the character that he was it. There was no question. Kat came in, and John knew her from 40-Year-Old Virgin, but he wasn't thinking of her for the part. And she was the most believable in the role, and it was, and that's how John cast the movie. I mean, John, every time he went for the performance he believed, as opposed to, any number of the other agendas that people can have for putting people in a movie. So,
another question, right there, you ma'am on the aisle. Did you ever find out how much would have been on that credit card had you taken it?
I didn't, but now that I know him, I wish I had taken the credit card.
Time for a few last questions. Question was in regards to, are you staying in the teen comedy genre, or are you expanding into other things?
I've been expanding into other things. I have a bunch of things across the board, but that certainly, I certainly was milking it for all it was worth.
Obviously it's a strength too. So I mean, you should reinforce it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. There was certainly a void there until Diablo Cody came along. By the way, I'm a huge fan of her stuff. So,
she's great.
Yeah. I'm definitely trying to get away from it now. Although I did sign up to do one. Vince Vaughn just hired me to do one, so I'm.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about some of your current projects, because you have a lot of things going. Give us the pitch on some of these as we go through them, just so people hear.
Well, the ones that are fairly active this year.
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Oh, Tommysaurus Rex.
Tommysaurus Rex.
Yeah, that was kind of Old Yeller with the Jurassic Park dinosaur.
I like that. See, that's a great pitch. That's a great pitch.
That was a graphic novel that was, and I think I tanked that one. That was the one job that I tanked.
Why? What went wrong?
What I didn't know when you can't have a dinosaur speak.
Old Yeller doesn't speak. Come on.
I know, and technically now there's E.T., but they do these other things. It was I don't know. I just I couldn't make it work.
All right.
I don't know what to say.
Fair enough. Misconnections. There's another project.
Misconnections was a movie about. It was literally the untitled Friendster project, then the untitled MySpace project, then the untitled Facebook project. It's about people in their 20s and online dating and that I wrote it for Universal, and then New Line picked it up, and now I think they're going in September with that one. Youth in Revolt, Michael Cera attached himself to, and
wow, that's great.
We just found out Miguel Arteta is directing, so that starts in late April. So that's the big one. And then.
Is it true you're going to try a remake of 3 O'Clock High that fills your?
I wrote that that's at Focus. That was an interesting story where I did a really bad draft, and they were ready to fire me, and then I wrote another one for free. I'm not supposed to say that probably, but and then they were happy with me again. So I don't know if they're going to make it or not, but it's out there. So.
When you do a remake like that, how close do you stay to the original script of this movie that obviously you love if you're taking that assignment?
Yeah. There are definitely sort of the most memorable. I think some of the most memorable things remained in the movie, and then but you got to remember. I mean, anybody going to see that movie today has not seen that film, so I had to make it its own thing. But yeah, I took what I thought I could use, and I ditched the rest.
You mentioned Fletch a second ago, and you'd be working with Harvey Weinstein for that. Could you talk about just what it's like to work with Harvey and how you guys are reimagining Fletch?
Well, the thing that happened with Fletch was, Harvey wanted us to do it, and then literally the next day, we ended up in a meeting, and we didn't know who we were meeting with, and it was Vince Vaughn, and Vince Vaughn hired us to do this other thing, and so we couldn't work. So then there was this whole thing between Vince and Harvey, and so now we're co-producers on Fletch, and Jesse Wigatow, who is a great writer, is doing a draft before we get on to do a draft. Harvey's interesting. I mean, we expected him to be much more crazy than he turned out to be. He actually, despite the fact that we weren't sure if he heard a word of what we said because he was on taking phone calls the whole time, he actually, like, at the end of the meeting, knew exactly what had gone on, asked me a question. I fumbled it. My brother who saved me. And then said, "Yeah, you guys are pretty smart." And in the end, he was obviously a smart guy. He's also he's got a lot of stuff going on. So be short and sweet when you interact with him. So. Is
there a title for the new Fletch movie?
Fletch.
Like it. It's got some heat. What about Valmy and the Dolls? Is that true that you're going to do something like that?
Yeah, we did it. Right before the strike, we did a draft, and we're going to probably come Wednesday. Let's all hope. I'll be back on that again. But Betty Thomas came to my brother and I, and said, "I have this. We've been trying to do this over and over and over again, and we're going to do one last shot at it." And we were a little reluctant at first until she gave us her pitch on it, which was sort of. To kind of do a movie about a girl who comes out here and ends up getting sucked into the world of, those girls who end up on, what's that show? In the tabloids. Those girls. Knows who I'm talking about? Okay, Brittany and Lindsay.
Yes, we know.
Okay. So
I just didn't want to utter their names.
So it was sort of, how do we do like a commentary on tabloid culture, both as sort of, and how the girls are both a part of it and a victim to it, and but also making a commentary on the fact that you've got someone playing with their kid on the beach, and somehow they manage to make something, sensationalistic about it. And it's just, it seemed like something that would be fun to do and timely, and so.
If that gets made, it would be considered a remake of the earlier version, so you would share screenplay credit with Roger Ebert, right? Didn't he get a screenplay credit on that? Or
No, he did.
Or was that Beyond?
He did Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Yes, I would love to share a screenplay credit with Roger.
His only screenplay credit.
I'll remake that movie too. I'm ready.
Right on. Well, you've been very generous with your time. We can't wait to see what you do next. Give it up again for Gustin Nash.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Thanks again to screenwriter Gustin Nash for chatting with us about his latest film, Charlie Bartlett. If you dug this episode of the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips are appreciated and definitely help out with equipment, hard drives, and all the other stuff we need to keep this podcast running. Of course, feel free to check out my blog, which I even managed to update on the rare occasion that I have time to do so by visiting www.jeffgoldsmith.blogspot.com. You can also always feel free to drop me a line by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, don't forget to click that subscribe button in iTunes or your podcatching software, because that's how episodes are downloaded automatically every time you click refresh. And if you have a minute, feel free to leave us positive feedback in the iTunes Music Store or at podcastalley.com. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.